Welcome back to another Accidentally Intentional podcast episode. And in this one, I have an old pal. I mean, we go way back. My friend George Kamel is on the show. What you need to know about him is that he's a Ramsey personality. He is a millionaire. We'll get into that later. And he has a best-selling book called Breaking Free from Broke. And in today's conversation, we are discussing our relationship with money because I think we can all agree it needs some work. And so George is here to help us out. What you should know that George is not is he is not a trust fund baby. He is not an entrepreneur. He actually is a salary employee who is also a millionaire before 40. So we have lots of things to discuss. But George, welcome to the show.
What a beautiful intro. And it's so good to see you again. I needed an excuse to hang out, and so your podcast was my best angle.
I mean, that is the best way nowadays, right?
You've been crushing
because
it.
Then you get longer conversations too.
That's what the weird thing is. These podcast interviews are the longest conversations I have with anyone in my life in a given year. I don't talk to my wife this much.
So funny. That really is true.
She doesn't respond to my text messages.
And then you're like, hey, babe, will you do a podcast episode? And she's like, oh, sure.
100%.
Yeah, I feel that. So, George, what I first want to talk about today is how your relationship with money has changed over the past decade.
Yeah, when I was 23, I started here at Ramsey. I had graduated from college. This was my first big boy job, as they call them. And I was $40,000 in debt. I had 36 grand in student loans, 4,000 in credit cards. And at the same time, I thought like this is normal. I thought like I'm doing pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
And my relationship with money was that money was an obstacle you had to constantly overcome every single month. It was just like, all right, just grin and bear it, and you're going to be able to pay rent and the bills. And when you're young and in college, everything's sort of hypothetical.
Right.
You're just sort of very starry-eyed, like, well, it'll work out. You go to college, you get a great job, bada bing, bada boom, you're going to be wealthy. Everything's going to be fine. And if we know the American story of, what's been happening the last decade, the frustrations of millennials and Gen Z, especially as they've entered the workforce and realized it's not all, sunshine and rainbows, and they can't afford the rent. They definitely can't afford a house. They're going, someone please pay off my student loans. And they don't even know the interest rate on their credit cards and their car payments. And here we are kind of with this riddled with anxiety and kind of like low key depressed, going through our day, going to jobs that maybe wasn't the dream job, just trying to survive instead of thrive. So that was me 10 years ago. I was that guy. And I was born into, an immigrant family who worked hard as they moved to the United States and had me and my brother. But I just saw money as something you were trying to be shrewd with and frugal with, but not something that was a tool to help you live your best life. The goal was always like, can I save a buck and can I survive another day? Which was a very survival mentality. And so I crawled out of that over a few years following these Ramsey baby steps, working here, going through Financial Peace University, getting on every dollar budget. And over time, again, this is not an overnight millionaire story. And it's, my wife and I combined working really hard for years with diligence, improving our careers and getting promotions that led us to this place 10 years later where you're like, oh my gosh, what a cool milestone.
Wow. You know what I love about your story is that you just basically are pointing to, I decided I didn't want my life to look like this anymore. And it wasn't just a decision. I had to take an action every single day to make that happen. And what I found fascinating, I want you to kind of share with the audience the revelation that came from the study you did at Ramsey about what the average millionaire actually looks like, because it's not people that are entrepreneurs selling business. What is the average everyday millionaire actually the archetype today?
Yeah, it was very interesting. When we did that study, you kind of expect to see some things that there's some diligence and consistency over time, but it's crazy how like normal they are. Like when you think millionaire, you're automatically thinking celebrities and athletes and like private jets and big mansions. And these look more like your next door neighbor. They look more like the guy with the car who's, it's a little bit beat up. He's not trying to live a flashy life. He has a normal job. He puts money in the 401k. These are teachers, engineers, accountants. Those were the top three, careers of millionaires. And so all of that gave me hope to go like, oh, well, they look more like me than they do LeBron James. And so maybe we're onto something here. It's possible for me to build wealth and have a great life without having
Mm,
to achieve this or becoming an entrepreneur, boss babe, celebrity athlete, signing a big contract. And so that gave
yeah.
me a lot of peace as we did this study to realize they drive Hondas and Toyotas and they're all used. They put money in their
Hmm.
401k. They weren't prodigies. We found that they were actually mediocre investors. What they
Mm,
did was just consistently put money away over time and not touch it. That was the magic secret sauce. And so that's what I've been trying to shout from the rooftops to these, young people out there and even people who are older, going, it's so much simpler than you think, but it's harder because you have to ignore all of the noise, all of the traps that are out there, all the distractions. And that's a big reason I wrote Breaking Free from Broke, was to uncover all of this and go, listen, here's what it is, here's what it isn't,
mm.
and here's a better way.
Yeah, I love that. And I really still am stuck on the fact of your age, because as I'm hearing you say that, thank you for articulating the fact that it's harder and it's easier at the same time, right? But you are not 60. So I'm imagining as you're retelling this, I'm like, oh, it's retired teachers. They've been doing this for, 30 years. They've been putting this money in. Explain to me how you had this drastic change in such a small amount of time. Because hearing that, I can imagine someone's overwhelmed and thinking, there's still something we don't know. We don't know about it and we don't have it. So speak to
Absolutely.
that.
Well, people think because you're in front of a microphone that you just get paid astronomically well, which I mean, in your
Yes.
case is true. But in my case, they go, well, of course, he's a Ramsey personality. Of course, it was easy for him. Dave pays him $1 million. I'm like, first
Right.
of all, I wish. Second of all, no, I was a normal employee for many years here at Ramsey before I worked my way into this role, sort of accidentally, to harken back to your
Yeah.
podcast name. And
Thank
so
you.
I was a social media coordinator. I was an intern and temp. I was getting paid hourly, 20 hours a week, just scraping by for a while till I got a full-time job. And even then, it was very normal. I was making like 30 something thousand dollars a year.
Mm,
And I was slowly get promotions and raises, and I was just your normal everyday W-2 employee. And so I'm telling you that it doesn't take $1 billion, but it also means you have to be working on your career. It's going to be a lot harder if you stay making $30,000 a year for 10
mm,
years. It may not happen for you that short, in that short of a time frame. And the other thing is, I met my now wife, Whitney, here at Ramsey. She just became a stay-at-home mom and retired from Ramsey after an amazing 9-year career here. So very
that's
happy
awesome.
for her. And, we can talk about that later on as a
Yeah.
financial move and when to make that. That was a big one for
Perfect.
her. And so all of that combined, it was putting money in away in our 401ks. We started off our marriage debt-free with money in the bank. We put a big down payment on a reasonable, modest town home that wasn't in the hippest part of Tennessee,
Yeah.
and we aggressively wanted to pay it off to have freedom in our early 30s and have no
Mm,
debt whatsoever. And so the appreciation of that home, on top of paying it off, which means we had 100% equity in the home, while investing into our Roth 401ks here at Ramsey for many years, while saving up and having the emergency fund and upgrading our cars and cash over time, all of a sudden you look up at your net worth statement and you go, oh, look at that. Our net worth combined as a household is $1 million. And so that was a
wow.
really cool milestone. And again, you don't wake up the next day and go, all right, time to retire and get a Rolls Royce. Our life really did not change. We still had to pay bills. There were still things to be done. There were still
Yeah.
goals to achieve. But at the same time, it made me go, well, everyone's saying that it can't be done. And we did it without
Mm,
really any magic tricks other than just like working hard at the same job and putting
yeah.
money away. And so it gave me peace that anyone could do it if I could.
Yeah, it's almost like the magic trick is just stewardship. Stewardship meaning being a good, responsible, and disciplined person with what I have in front of me and finding ways to maximize it without gamifying it and finding like a scam in the process. And, I'm thinking about how millennials and Gen Z have this weight upon us. And I don't think we realize it. I just had this revelation this morning as I was listening to your episode with Graham Stephan on Iced Coffee Hour, which everyone should listen to. It was a fascinating conversation. But Graham mentioned this concept of basically having golden handcuffs. And you had addressed it. And he said, yeah, I'd rather have 3% on a 30-year mortgage. And you're like, so handcuffs. And he said, well, kind of, but golden handcuffs. But I really had this epiphany as I was listening to it because all of us want to win the lottery. Why do we want to win the lottery? Because we can buy anything we want without feeling restricted, weighed down like we're owing anybody anything back. And I was like, we don't even realize how embedded this lack of safety is in our bodies. So I kind of want to hear you just address this and just the big misconceptions that millennials and Gen Z have around money and lending and loans.
Yeah, I see these TikToks and Instagram reels all the time, and fans send them to me being like, you need to react to this. I'm like, I would have to devote my life to just like
Right.
debunking trash on the internet, which could be fun, but also could be exhausting. And
Right.
here's the mentality of what they're saying. They're saying debt is something to be leveraged. It's not something you need to be scared of. You need to embrace all of this risk. It's going to give you this amazing life. And in reality, because I actually take these calls on the Ramsey Show of when all the times it didn't work out like it was supposed to on paper, when people got
Right.
starry-eyed and really got greedy, got prideful, got fearful, that's when these sort of life-altering financial moves happen. What
Mm,
happens is it weighs on you physically, financially, relationally, on your marriage. Because usually there's not two spouses who are like, yeah, let's take on all the risk, regardless of us trying to raise a family and pay bills and worry about
right.
tomorrow. And
Right.
so there's usually one person who got greedy, who saw TikTok, who decided, I'm going to put my family's financial future at risk. So what you find
Mm,
is usually these are young single guys who have not lived a real day in the real world going like, bro, if you want to be wealthy, this is how I did it. I got a rental property and I did the BRRRR strategy and I did a HELOC on it to get the money out of that. And I
mm,
did another one. And I don't want their life. You know, once you have a wife and a kid, it changes the way you see life and money. It's no
mm.
longer that money's the goal. The goal becomes raising a healthy, a whole family that doesn't hate
Right.
you. That really is the goal for me now. And so money just becomes a tool for us to get there. And I don't
Yeah.
want it to be an obstacle in our way, causing stress. And what I found after I got rid of debt was that it was not a blessing to my life. And I was able to cash flow everything I've ever wanted over time with delayed gratification, doing it slower. And I'm
Mm,
okay with that because I find that Proverbs 13:11 hasn't changed. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever
mm.
gathers little by little will increase it. And that is my sort of like the drum I keep beating, going like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
on the right path. I know everyone's going faster. They have 22 million. I have a million. I'm okay with that. I got to stop the comparisons because it will never end.
Wow. That is really eye opening because you see all of these people who, I mean, I've seen this personally in my own life. People that I was very close to go from, hey, we had this idea. Hey, we started this business. Hey, we're investing in crypto, just investing in as much as there was that could get the quickest return. And then watching the flip side of that happening and everything kind of come crashing down around this. I mean, a lot of people in my life, I work in tech. This has been the reality for a lot of people. And it's just so sad. And that's exactly the proverb that I was thinking about of, man, like, what if there is actually this concept that we are never supposed to take a lot of money in a short amount of time because we have no idea how to actually treat it and make and build a lifestyle around it that isn't dependent on it. So I love that articulation.
I was just going to add to that the Graham conversation you were referencing.
Yeah.
What I've been seeing, we've had this argument a lot with mortgages because mortgage interest rates were at all-time lows. Then
Right.
they spiked to oblivion. And so everyone is not wanting to move or unable to move because they're going, well, I can't let go of my 2 or 3% mortgage. And I've been preaching to people, you know what the best interest rate is on a mortgage? 0%. And that's what it is when you pay it off. Because they're all telling me, you're an idiot for paying off your house early. I can't believe you would do that. And I'm going, I don't have the golden handcuffs of going like, I can't move because my 3% mortgage, I'm going to lose it.
Mm,
Instead,
hmm.
I'm like, we have freedom. We have options. We have margin. We can move wherever we want because we're not worried about the next mortgage. And that's why I love about the Ramsey principles is that debt freedom will always lead you to freedom.
Mm,
And there's other ways to build wealth, but it doesn't truly create a quote free life when you owe money to other people. And as you talked about stewardship, I just kept thinking shortcuts and stewardship don't go hand in hand. They cannot
exactly.
coexist. Stewardship is an intentional long-term decision, whereas shortcuts are more like what can I get today? And again, I've called this the three stooges of wealth building in my book, and it's fear, greed, and pride. And at the end
Mm.
of the day, in anyone's TikTok and reels and the as they get angry on the internet, I can point to one of those three emotions that are underlying there.
Wow. That's so true. I mean, especially the fear part. I remember Jade Warshaw, another Ramsey personality, speaking about how her debt was the elephant on her back. And just the gravity of that and hearing you have this freedom. And another thing that was addressed in that other podcast episode was your abundance mindset. And I think they absolutely coincide. I mean, my husband and I talk about this all the time. We hate owing money to anybody. Like, even if it's like, hey, you could pay me back for this dinner, we're like,
No.
get it out as fast as possible. You know,
I'll
like,
Venmo you right now while we're at the table.
literally. But it's that concept of like every single thing gets layered and layered and layered to the point that we don't even realize we're not even breathing air the same way anymore. And so I just love how it's so clear that you have found that freedom and that you have the lid unlocked in every other area of your life as a result of that.
Absolutely. And it helped us make decisions like my wife staying at home. It wasn't a financial decision. It just became an emotional, relational one for her because she loves this place and loves all the friendships, loves her job.
Yeah.
But there was never a conversation of like, are we going to be able to afford this? We went, yeah, we got rid of the mortgage payment. We got rid of all of our debt so that we could have these kinds of options without having this like, oh gosh, things are going to be tight. We still wanted to have
Exactly.
margin to invest and give generously and to spend and enjoy life. And that's something that debt freedom, buys you that really all of the risk in the world could never buy you.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And I think one of the cool things about what Ramsey Solution does is you guys get a bad rap is like you have to live the rest of your life having no fun and no freedom. When actually the goal and the whole thesis for what you do is to get out of debt as fast as possible so that you can experience freedom and live the life that you dreamed of and give in ways that you never could have imagined when you were still owing other people. And
That's
so
so true.
but I just love it because it's so encouraging. Like, even that, knowing that there's a company that does that gives people hope. Even if they haven't had that ability to think, oh, I can do this and I can start today, which we'll get to by the end of this episode. But just knowing that there's people out here that actually care about your emotional health, your relational health, your future. Not from the standpoint of we can get something from you, but actually the complete opposite. We want something for you. So,
Absolutely. And that's something we talk about on the Ramsey Show. I hosted 3 times this week, and a lot of the calls that, people have a flat tire. We find that you can be doing great financially, but their
mm,
marriage is falling apart, or they have
mhm,
a great career, but they're not on track for their financial goals. And so we think you need to have a well-rounded, balanced life. And
yeah,
part of
yeah,
that is getting your money in order. And it's a priority because it affects your career, it affects your relationships, it affects what job you choose or don't choose. And that's why you've got to get that right. You've got to build the foundation of debt freedom, emergency fund, investing for the future. And then you can actually focus on everything else. And that in the book, I say this line, I want to talk about money so we can stop talking about money. And people think I go home and I'm just like, let's talk about mutual funds. I want to talk about everything else in life because I think that's more
right.
important long term. But while it's living rent free in your brain, we have to address it. We've got to get to the root of these problems.
Yeah. Yeah. There seems to be kind of historically this really uncomfortable aura around talking about finances. Like, even between friends, it's just like, ugh, it's the thing we don't talk about. Why do you think that is? Do you think embarrassment is the underpinning? And then on the flip side of that, what have you learned about actually talking to people about money? Like, are they more receptive once you actually just bite the bullet and go first? Tell me about that.
People are happy to talk about money when it's complaining. It's much harder to talk about it when it comes to transformation and change. So
Mm,
those are the 2 caveats. Like, people on the street will tell me how much debt they have and how much they make, and if it's in the context of, life's really difficult. And so we can start with the empathy, but if it just ends there and we don't actually lead them to life change, you didn't actually accomplish anything. It was just a good
wow.
venting session. And so I think when it comes to talking about money, there is a lot of shame, guilt, embarrassment, lack of knowledge, just straight ignorance, a lack of financial literacy. And like
Yeah.
you mentioned, it can be a sore spot. There's wounds there. There's mistakes that they've made that they haven't recovered from. There's things
Yeah.
they watched their parents handle money and it destroyed a marriage. And so I think money is just the symptom and it points to something a lot deeper that really matters to us. And
Mm,
that's why it's so much harder. It sort of reflects the human soul because money, you can't talk about money without talking about the things that you value and how you live your life and your habits and your lifestyle and your dreams and your goals. And that stuff matters. And so money on
right.
the surface we can talk about, but as soon as it goes beyond the surface into something real, we all sort of back away from the table and go, "Oh, this is uncomfortable."
Mm.
And that's the power of Financial Peace University, getting in an actual class where everyone's admitting their own money mistakes, and you get to go, oh my gosh, I thought mine was bad, or oh, I'm not alone, or I
Yeah.
didn't know about that either. And we just
Right.
need permission to go, it's okay that we don't know. We're all here learning together. We're all going to do hard things. We're all going to have to sell a freaking car by the end of this class. And it helps you learn that you're not alone. Other people are doing this. And that's what I love about the social proof of 10 million people
Yeah.
have followed this plan with Financial
Wow.
Peace University and the baby steps. And so it works. And I think it's when you feel like you're alone and isolated, and that's when the shame really starts to take root. And one of our jobs here as Ramsey personalities is to unlock people from that bondage and guilt and shame and give them hope instead of cynicism and frustration and anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that, especially knowing the statistics that 6 out of 10 people in America are living paycheck to paycheck. That's staggering. Yet at the same time, we can hear that stat and be like, yeah, but people don't understand. No, quite literally, most of the people in the United States, for instance,
Like, we're
understand.
all broke. You're not even
Exactly.
special. You know, don't act like you're the only one.
Yeah, come
It's
on. You don't
rude.
get a special discount for being broke. Yeah, exactly. But on the contrast of this, people hate budgeting and the idea around it. Yet there's this social media trend that's happening right now called loud budgeting. Can you explain what that is and why this is catching fire with the younger generations?
Absolutely. This is something that caught on TikTok. A guy started talking about it, and he was sort of pushing against this idea of like quiet luxury. And so he's flipped it on its head and said loud budgeting. And all that meant was Gen Z is going, I'm going to be very vocal and honest about the fact that I don't have the money to do these things. I don't have the money to prop up a fake lifestyle, and I need to be okay with that. And so I think it's probably the healthiest Gen Z trend. You know, we're coming out of
Wow.
Crocs and cargo pants coming back. Like I
Don't
think
get me
it's
started.
time for a healthier trend, and loud budgeting is it. And I think what is happening is Gen Z is realizing we can't live this facade anymore that everyone else is living. We want to hit our financial goals, and therefore we're going to set up healthy boundaries and say, I don't have the money to go on that trip. I don't have the money to eat out. It's not in the budget, and therefore I'm not going to do it. And that level of delayed gratification, I think, is so healthy. And I commend, you know, we talk about how there's no bad generation. There's bad eggs in every single generation. There's lazy ones and great ones in every single one. So I hate generalizing, but like Gen Z is the problem, or millennial, the boomers ruined it all.
Right.
It has nothing to do with that. It's about your mentality, how you grew up, your worldview of the world, and how much hope and optimism you have that your life can change and that you have a part in that.
Wow. Well, props to Gen Z because I do think that we're learning that being quiet about what's actually going on in your life is not helping anybody, let alone yourself. And there's been this whole idea and lie that we've bought into of like, we can't let anybody know because they don't care. They won't want to know, you know, when it's
Or they
actually
won't like us anymore. They won't love us. They'll judge us. And I think our biggest fear as humans is that rejection and isolation. That's why we
Yes.
bottle it all in and just go, well, I'll just deal with it internally. But it always bleeds into your external life. You can't stop
Correct.
that.
Yeah. And it's not like people can't see it happening, you know? And actually going first, which is a big concept that John Deloney talks about, but it literally will pay off most of the times because one, you're giving someone the opportunity to hold what's going on. What they do with it next, you can't control. But realizing that you don't have the weight of keeping this secret that's actually destroying your life anymore is incredibly freeing. So, I mean, here's what I'm thinking right now. Can the other generations, let's say millennials, is this something we should start having conversations about with our friends? Should we start talking about like, hey, here's how I'm doing financially? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think you have to be in a healthy friend group. It's hard for one person who's healthy to
Sure.
talk to a very unhealthy person and have any meaningful transformational conversation happen. But when you
Right.
can talk to a friend with empathy instead of attacking, because a lot of times, and this, I'm going to throw some Ramsey fans under the bus here. We can be a little overzealous about the Ramsey plan and be like, you need to go sell the car. And they act like, they're Dave on air. And this is unsolicited advice that these people are now, getting harangued with. And I think that that's the problem. If you lead with empathy instead, and you openly talk about your own struggles first, even if it's where you were and where you are today, they might go, yeah, but that's for you. That worked for you. It's not going to work for me. Well, now
Yeah.
that gives you an opportunity to dig deeper. And you go, why do you think that?
Hmm.
Well, I don't make enough money. Well, I'd be happy to. I got this great budgeting tool. It was really helpful for me, and I remember feeling that exact same way. And this really showed me reality on paper of where I was at, where I needed to be, the gap, the margin. I'd be happy to work on that with you if you're open to it.
Yeah.
It's a very different conversation than you're broken. You need to stop spending money. You're being an idiot. Dave can get away with that because he's Papa Dave and he has the authority of 30 years on the air helping people transform their life. And some people, they call in knowing I need to kind of be yelled at. I need a kick in the pants. I have been being an idiot. But when it comes to a friendship, you have to know where you stand as a friend, even family. That can be very tricky because we all
Yes.
want to help our family get on board financially and have
Of
them live their
course.
best financial life. But man, even I have a hard time getting my family on board. And I'm in this role. This is what I do for a living. And so it's
Yeah.
not easy. It takes time and you have to build a relationship. It can't be something that's done in a vacuum and isolation where you yell at them and say, read this book. You have to do it out of a place of love.
Totally. Such a great point, George. And I think that really brings to the forefront that relationships are everything and the quality of your relationships are everything. And that if somebody opens up to you about that, that is an absolute gift that you should also steward well because you have the opportunity to speak into their life and give them the hope that I'm feeling right now from you, George. And I want to know I kind of want to dig deeper into this topic of if we're going to talk about money with our friends, because I think a lot of us who have followed the Ramsey plan immediately want to help everybody else. Like the intentions are good, the acting it out, not as good. Have you had an experience in your life where you're like, ah, I should not have said that to them? Like you wanted to help and it went wrong, and how you've corrected your mindset around that?
Oh yeah. And I'll be honest, this happened with my older brother. And
Mm.
he lives in Boston, very different mentality,
Oh, yeah.
and he had some debt and he finally was opening up to me and he went, "Hey, I'm going to make a spreadsheet of here's like my debt and here's my expenses. Can you help?" And I immediately went a little too harsh and I was like, "You got to sell the car. What are you doing with this car payment?" And it was an immediate shutdown. I was like, "Okay, never mind. I'm out."
Mm.
Instead of
Mm.
showing him why that, here's all the options, here's what I would recommend, here's something that you could do, I treated it like a call on the Ramsey show instead of this
Mm.
is my older brother who I love. And I was a
Mm.
little too harsh. I came across a little too strong instead of leading with, some financial literacy and knowledge and hope and going, hey, what if? And I think leading with questions like a good teacher. Everyone had that great teacher in school who didn't just give you the answer, they sort of made you work for it. And then when
Wow.
you came
Yeah.
up with that answer yourself, there was that smile on your face because you were so proud. And you kind of have that like, dang it, they led me to it through a really interesting teaching style instead of just problem solving for me. And
Yeah.
I think we need that as humans and adults. We can't have every problem solved for us. We need to sort of get there ourselves and sort of incept the idea and let it be theirs to own. And just like with any goal, it can't be someone else's goal for you. My goal was for him to sell the car. His
Right.
goal was not that in the moment. And so that's a big part of financial coaching as we work with our coaches. You have to learn the communication style, you have to learn their paradigm, where they're coming from to help them long term.
Yeah. It's really interesting you mentioned that because I'm thinking about the fact that for 30 years, Dave Ramsey has been taking calls, and all the calls are the same. The majority of them are all the same. So you would think he's run out of stuff to talk about. But there's something that happens when you hear someone speaking directly to your situation that actually gives you the strength to say, okay, it's go time. How do you feel like you've been able to break that barrier between I'm just talking to the masses, it's not for me, to, oh, okay, this is for me and I can do this?
Yeah, well, as we take calls on the air, we've had to get really, and this is something Dave is a master of, is the active listening.
Mm.
Instead of just going, okay, what's my answer next? Which is what a lot of us do in conversation. It's either, well, how can I one up this? What can I bring to this? Instead, I'm going, okay, they're sharing a very intimate part of their life with me, and my
Mm.
job is to look for clues that might help me solve this puzzle in the 5 or 7 minutes we have. It is a daunting task. I'll be truthful. And there's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
lot of times I feel like, wow, we really helped them. But you can tell when that light bulb moment happens. And it's
Mm.
usually due to something where I look at the emotion they're bringing. So if they're leading with a lot of emotion, I try to help them slow down and look at facts. And when they're leading with a lot of facts and intellect to try to, to like math their way out of it, I try to lead them to emotion. And I found that
Mm,
has been a very powerful way to sort of trick someone's brain and sort of, if it's like comedy. You want to surprise them. You want to take them in sort of left field turn to where their brain goes,
yeah.
oh, was not expecting that. Because if
Mm,
I try to outmath someone who loves to do the math, it's going to be difficult. And if I try
right.
to out emotion someone who's bringing a lot of that to the table, it's going to be difficult. And that's something
Wow.
Dave has done really well, is asking really good questions that lead them to the answer. And he also leads with
Mm,
story. You'll find this on air. Dave will often go into sort of a diatribe like, man, when I was 24 years old, here's what I did. And I did dumb, PhD and DUMB with zeros on the end. And he's talking to a 24-year-old who's about to do something dumb, who just had done something dumb. Instead of yelling at them, he goes, I remember being just like you, and here's how I transformed. And it gives them
mm.
permission to go to put themselves in those shoes. And so I do think empathy is a great tool, as well as learning their style. If they're going emotion, I go math. If they're going math, I lean emotion. Those are some I guess radio tricks I've learned to actually help people in 5 minutes, which again, a daunting task versus an hour conversation.
Yeah, sure. But I think even that right there, this isn't even about money. This is about the heart of people at the end of the day, right? And that's what we're talking about. And I wanna pull in that thread a little bit more, because there's so many people who want to make a drastic change in their life. Maybe it's the whole concept of this podcast, which is destroying loneliness by building rich relationships. And they're like, I want to destroy my loneliness. Now, there's a difference between wanting it and actually doing it. How have you been able to help people that are teetering on that line of, I want this so desperately, to take the first action and get the ball rolling?
I love the concept of reverse engineering. And this is where you have a goal, a dream. And so
Mm,
if I'm on the other end, I want to ask them, instead of leading with me pointing out all of their problems and flaws, which by the way, they probably already know. It's not going to feel
right.
good. Instead, I say, so what are your actual goals? What are your dreams? If I could snap my fingers, where would you be 5 years from now, financially or relationally?
Mm,
And
hmm.
usually they're going to have the answer of, well, I want to have freedom. I want to be able to do what I want to do, live where I want to live, work where I want to work. I want to travel more. I want to have a healthy family. Okay, great. Well, what do you think right now is holding you back? Well, I mean, all these bills, man. If I could just get,
Mm,
I go, oh, okay. So the gap here is the margin in the money you have every month, or it's your career. You need to get a better job or have a second income. Then the second job doesn't become this obstacle that's in the way where I'm adding more to their plate. It becomes the vehicle to their dreams and goals.
mm,
And that's what I think is powerful for anyone coaching, anyone in the transformation business trying to get someone to change their action, take the first step, is to go, okay, what is the faraway goal? What's the gap? And what's the first thing we can do today to get there? Because then you can actually connect the dots. If you can't connect
yeah.
the dots as to what this action is doing to get me closer, why the heck would you do it? Why would you sell the car if you didn't actually believe it was going to cause financial freedom down the line? And that's what I think the secret sauce is that reverse engineering, helping them dream big, reminding them of that dream, because then they're stuck to it. They go, well, you just told me. Were you lying to me about your dream? No, that's what
Right.
I really want. Okay, well, here's your best path of action. Here's the shortest distance between you and freedom, or you and wealth, or
Mm.
you and a healthy relationship. That is a powerful conversation.
Yeah, that's so great. And I think that most people don't know what they want, because they
They
might
haven't
think
thought
they know what
about
they
it.
want. Exactly. And you might be like, oh, I want this. And then you ask why, and there's no substance behind the why. And so it is interesting that really everything in life comes back to, what do I want and why do I want it? Because if both are not there and both aren't huge, then it's probably going to fall apart. I think of the concept of fitness, right? And my husband is in the fitness world. And he actually tells people up front, if he's taking on a new client, he said, you will need to commit to work with me for at least a year. Because right there, he's vetting. If you're trying to get fit in 90 days for that summer beach bod, or you want to fit in a wedding dress, then I'm not for you, because that is not a big enough dream. I want the dream to be, I want to be able to play with my grandkids without being in pain. Something that's actually
Yes.
so much bigger than yourself. And the same is obviously true for finance, and the same
Oh
is
yeah.
obviously
It's get
true.
rich quick. It's get rich quick with money. It's get skinny and fit quick in fitness. And we all want that shortcut. And no coach wants to work with someone who's looking for shortcuts. Because
Correct.
number one, they will fail. The client will fail, the coach will fail because it's not long lasting. And I think transformation is always something that changes you for the long term and not just in the short term. And
Yeah.
I love that analogy of fitness because the same thing has rung true with money. And it usually takes about 3 whys to get to a real answer.
Mm.
Why do you want to get out of debt? I don't know. It would be better. It would give me, well, why? Well, really, I feel like a failure as a father because I'm
Mm.
not able to provide for my family and buy that house. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. And
Right.
then a third one is I want to have a legacy that I'm proud of.
Mm.
Now that is a why. I don't want my kids to experience the same financial harm that I experienced. That is a
Yeah.
why that will carry you instead of just like, well, I feel like it'd be fun, be a good idea. You need to have a deeper why than that. Otherwise, you're going to fall off the wagon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even saying I want freedom, what is freedom to you? It's very different
Yeah.
from person to person. I want to go back to your brain when you decided, okay, I actually don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck anymore. What process did you have to go through to go from I don't want to do this anymore to creating a why? Like let's talk through frameworks people can apply to their life if they're realizing I don't know why, I just don't like where I'm at right now.
Yeah, well, I think it does take some deep introspection, and most of us we are so busy with life and just thinking about what's happening this weekend, we can't even think about the future. I mean,
True.
that's a luxury for most people to even think that far ahead. But
Wow.
when I did some introspection and realized the hardest part to realize was that like my plan had failed me. And while I could blame everyone
Mm,
else of like, well, they told me to go to school and get good grades so I can get into a good college, and that good college would lead me to an amazing job, we all fell for that trap. And it was well meaning parents and misguided guidance counselors that were all involved in this and teachers who really wanted to help. But at the end of the day, it was still my plan to go the
mm,
path I went, to sign the dotted line on the student loans, to go to that college, to get that degree. We have to take ownership. And as I talk about in the book, it's not all your fault, but it's your responsibility.
mm,
That was the
mhm.
hardest pill for me to swallow because I wanted it to be everyone else's fault. It was so much easier because then like complaining felt good. It wasn't about
Of
me. It
course.
was everything else
Right.
is the problem. And so the hardest part, I think, before you have any transformation is taking a really good look in that mirror and going,
Mm,
that's the problem. And that's the solution. If you don't
mm,
believe those two things are true, you will never transform. If you're not the problem, well, then your solution, you're some like savior of your own life. And if you're, if you're the solution, if you're the problem, not the solution, then, well, you're not going to do anything about it. It's always going to be an outside effect that has to change your life. It has to be the government forgiving my student loans. It has to be the
right.
inheritance.
Wow.
And that also is going to be a long, frustrating road. And the longer you wait, the more shame and baggage that happens down the road. If I was 48 and realized that, it's a harder pill to swallow because I've now
Mm,
lived over half my life and I feel like it was wasted. And so the
wow.
earlier you can have that paradigm shift and go, it's not all my fault, but it's my responsibility, not by my hand, but in my lap. That's what John Deloney says.
Right.
That's a powerful place to be. And that's what I find most people say that they've had their I've had it moment where they go, I'm
Mm,
done. I'm done living this way. I know there's a better way. I believe that there's a better way. And I'm going to act and actually have my decisions and habits follow that. And so we think about that and think, act, believe in those 3 areas.
yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking that's trap too. If you're blaming everybody else, and like I 100% am guilty of this mindset of like, who did this? Like I often can revert there because, as you said, it's easy. But I'm literally living a life in shackles. If everybody else is responsible for what actually happens to me, how can I do anything? How can I find any freedom if everybody else is responsible for it? So, yeah, I think that's a great
You'll never find it.
articulation.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, we were talking about real estate earlier. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's not even people anymore. It's inflation is the the demon, and real estate market, that's the enemy here, and it's the
Right.
boomers and it's the Fed and the president. Goodness gracious, the next one's gonna fix this. Whoever it is, they're gonna fix my life problems. And I found that 0 times in history have I been able to have someone else affect that level of change in my life. And so
Yeah.
it's just really a waste of time to even put your faith and hope into those things. And there's a lot of things we can't control. And so we talk about controlling the controllables. I can't control inflation and the Fed and who the president's going to be. Now I can cast my vote and go, I did my part. But at the end of the
Yeah,
day, that's not going to change my life. What changes my life is controlling the way I spend my money, controlling the goals that I have, the relationships that I have, the person I marry, the way I treat my daughter. All of that will affect my life way more than any outside factor.
exactly. I wonder how many of our lives would change if we actually had this thought and let it go deep into our souls of what if nobody else is coming to save me?
Ooh, I love that.
What if it all rests on me? Not like you have to save the world, but you have to save what's happening to you. And you're the only one that can.
That's a
So,
powerful question.
yeah, now I'm going to be stuck on that the rest of
And
the
it feels
day.
better than nobody is coming. It's just a
Yeah,
what if that sort of posits, say, like, okay, if that's the case, then maybe I should make some steps and take some effort to do something about
exactly.
this. That's a really
Exactly.
powerful question. Write that on your bathroom mirror for everyone listening right now.
I actually am going to do that right afterwards
It kind
because
of it feels hopeless at first, and then the more you ruminate on it, the more empowering it becomes.
exactly. Yeah, it's very Jocko Willink of me too, but I
Yes.
like that. I
Discipline
mean,
equals
that phase.
freedom.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And extreme ownership. Yes. Okay, so George, I want everyone to buy your book, especially if you're feeling that weight of I want something to change. I don't know necessarily how to yet, but I definitely want that. And I think buying the book is a great first step. Second great step is to actually think about and answer the question, what do I want? Why do I want it? So after we've done those two things, George, what would you say is a great next step for someone to take?
When it comes to your finances, I think paying attention and actually doing kind of an audit of where you're at financially, that's a
Mm,
scary part because most people have buried their head in the sand. They don't even know how much what the debt numbers are, what the interest rates are, what the minimum payments are. They're just sort
yeah.
of skating by. It's sort of a paycheck comes in, fingers crossed, everything comes out, and I don't overdraft. That's a win for most people. That's the paycheck to
Wow.
paycheck mentality. And so that first step of just making a budget, we have an app called Every Dollar. You don't have to open up an Excel spreadsheet ever again. You can just download this app and your spouse can log in if you've got one. And all you do is pay attention and go, okay, here's our paychecks. Here's all of our expenses. Is this adding up? Are we $300 in the hole? Because that looks a lot like $3,600 a year on credit card because we didn't have that money. And so that helps you just start to formulate a plan. And then the Ramsey baby steps is just such a great framework for anyone, regardless of where they're at financially, to sort of know if they're on track. Well, if I have debt, I got to get out of debt. If I don't have an emergency fund, I need an emergency fund. If I'm
Mm,
investing or not investing or barely investing, I need to begin investing 15%. Oh, we got to put
hmm
away money for the kids' college. We should really get this
Yeah.
house paid off. So all of that just helps you move forward with some clarity. Because right now, most of the calls on the Ramsey Show, they're trying to do 17 things at once, and they're all
Mm,
good things. None of them are bad. They're trying to pay off debt. They're trying to put money in savings. They're trying to invest. They're trying to pay off the mortgage, and they're getting nowhere because it's like dropping, it's a one drop in four different buckets instead of just
mm,
pouring water in. And that's the power of the baby steps. So the book, covers that a little bit, but really the first 2/3 is that paradigm shift that we've talked about of just
mm,
gaining that financial literacy, learning that there is another way, learning that you were lied to and it's not okay. And I'm sorry, but
mm.
we're going to take some steps to get out of this. And that's the last third of the book is where I talk about how budgeting is freedom and spending is self-control and generosity is joy and margin is breathing room. And I
Mm.
very tactically, because I'm very pragmatic, walk people through ways they can start to climb out of that hole and live out that paradigm shift, because that's where the magic happens. We can change our mind all day, but unless you change your
Yeah.
behavior, actions, your habits, you're going to be right where you were, just with some cool new information up here.
I love that. And actually, George, you didn't know this, but thanks to Ramsey Solutions, if you want to experience the Every Dollar app to take that next step in your budgeting, you can actually leave a 5-star review of the Accidentally Intentional podcast on Spotify
Yes.
or Apple Podcast, screenshot it, send it to the Accidentally Intentional Instagram, and you can win 6 months free to the Every Dollar app. So thank you to the Ramsey team for offering that.
That is so cool. And you know what? I'll throw in, I'm going to do a few signed books for the people who reach out to you saying, hey, this podcast really helped me kind of get some control of my money. I'm excited about following the plan. I'm going to sign some books and I'll send them to you and we'll send them. You get me the addresses and I'll send them out right to the people.
Let's
Does that
go.
sound
I love
good?
that. I love that. Thank you, George. And
Absolutely.
even that heart right there, George puts generosity first because his heart is for you to experience the freedom that he has found in his personal life. So, George, I so appreciate that because it speaks to really your character and integrity all the way around.
Thank you so much.
So, I want to know as we're coming to the close, if there's one piece of advice that you would want people to know, everyone listening who's feeling empowered, or maybe they're not there yet and they just need that spark of hope and to feel like you're speaking directly to them, what would you say?
I talk about this in the last chapter of my book, and it has very little to do with money, but also everything to do with money. And I talk about the relationship between hope and cynicism. And I go first
Mm,
and I tell people, I am a recovering cynic. I am the person I was the guy who's like, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist, right? Which is like the worst person you want in the room. And I thought it was like a flex to be cynical. I thought there was a
mm,
lot of like wisdom, but really cynicism is just negativity wrapped in fear. And so my advice to everyone watching out there is to remember this: cynicism is a choice. Hope
mm,
is also a choice, and you have to choose daily. And
mm.
more often you choose cynicism, the worse your life is going to be. And the more often you choose hope, as hokey as it sounds, the better your life is going to be. And that's not power of positive thinking, that's reality because it
Mhm.
reflects how you see the future. And if you're cynical about the
Yes.
future, why would you do anything to change it? And if you're hopeful about the future, you're going to do everything in your power to change it.
Dang. Well, we ended that on a bar, didn't we?
We drop bars or we spit bars? I don't know
We
what's
drop
cool
mics,
anymore.
we spit
Drop
bars. There's
mics,
just
spit
there's a
bars.
lot of things happening here. Yeah. Well, George, I really appreciate the wisdom and the empathy that you have shared with us today. I'm so inspired by your story and how you take action on that and help millions of people around the world every day. So thank you for all that you do. And thank you so much for being on the Accidentally Intentional podcast.
It was an honor. Thank you so much.